Today we'll be solving systems of equations using elimination. Eliminate means to get rid of. So I'm looking for a way to get rid of either one of my x's or my y's. So if I look at my x's right now, I have a 3x and a 4x. Well, they can't get rid of each other because if I add these together, I'm going to get 7x. And if I subtract them, I'm going to get a negative x. Here I have a positive 4y and a negative 4y. And if I add them together, they're going to cancel each other out. So what I'm going to do for this first problem here, because these y's are the same, I'm going to add these two equations. So what I have is 3x plus 4x, which gives me 7x. And then I'm going to show you on the calculator how a positive 4 plus, since it says positive 4 plus negative 4 equals 0. So instead of putting a 0 here, they just cancel out. One's positive and one's negative. And I'm left with equals 2 plus 12, which is 14. And now if I divide both sides so I can find out what x is, divide both sides by 7, and I get x equals 2. And now I'm going to take that and substitute it back into, I can use either equation that I want to use. I'm going to use the 3x plus the 4y. So now I'm going to use substitution, which we learned a couple days ago. So 3x plus 4y equals 2. I'm substituting my 2 back in. So 3 times 2 plus 4y equals 2. 3 times 2, PEMDAS tells me to multiply first, is 6 plus 4y equals 2. Remember, I can't add those together. These are y's and this is a number. So I'm going to get rid of the 6, move it over to the other side by doing a negative 6 or a minus 6. 6 minus 6 cancels out, and I'm left with 4y equals 2 minus 6, which is a negative 4. Divide both sides by 4 to find out what y is. And I get y equals negative 4 divided by 4 is a negative 1. So for these two systems, when x is negative 1, y, oops, sorry, I did that backwards. When x is 2, y will be negative 1 in both of those equations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you check, because we just did all that work. I'd hate to get the wrong answer. So I'm going to start with my first equation, 3x plus 4y equals 2. I'm going to plug in the value of x, so 3 times 2 plus 4, I'm going to use my parentheses, times y, which is a negative 1, should equal 2. And if it doesn't, I made a mistake. PEMDAS tells me to multiply first, so I get 6 plus 4 times a negative 1, which is a negative 4, should equal 2. 6 plus negative 4 is a positive 2. A positive 2 does equal a positive 2. But it might work for this equation. I have to make sure it also works in this equation. So I'm going to check that equation, which is 4x minus 4y equals 12. Plug in my x and y values. So 4 times 2 minus 4 times negative 1 should equal 12. 4 times 2 is 8. Remember, minus 4, same thing as negative 4. So negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive 4. 8 plus 4 is 12. So since 12 equals 12, this solution is right for these two systems, or for this system in these two equations. So now I'm going to look at another example, because sometimes it's not as nice as that one is. Here, I have a 6x and a 6x. So since my x's are the same, if I add them together, I'm going to get a positive 12. So I'm going to subtract. And this is where it gets a little tricky. So 6x minus 6x is 0. They cancel out. Positive 5, remember plus 5 is the same thing as positive 5. So a positive 5 minus a negative 7. So if I need to go to my calculator, positive 5 minus negative 7 is a positive 12. Because remember, that minus minus really makes it a positive. So positive 12y equals 4 minus a negative 20. If I need to go to my calculator, 4 minus negative 20 is a positive 24. Oops, grabbed the wrong thing. Divide both sides by 12, and I get y equals 2. And now I'm going to take this, plug it back into either equation. You can pick either one. We're going to substitute it back in to find out what the x is. I'm going to use my first one. I don't know why, but I just like to use the first one sometimes. 6x plus 5y equals 4. We said that y is 2, so 6x plus 5 times 2 will equal 4. 6x plus 5 times 2 is 10 equals 4. I'm trying to find out what x is, so I'm going to get rid of my plus 10 by doing a minus 10 to both sides. And I get 6x equals 4 minus 10, which is a negative 6. Divide both sides by 6. And I get x equals negative 1. So for this system of equation, when x is negative 1 and y is positive 2, for both of those equations, and that's where those two lines will intersect. That's the solution. But again, after I did all that work, I want to check my answer. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to check. Use my first equation, 6x plus 5y equals 4. And I'm going to plug in my x and my y values to make sure it's correct. 6 times a negative 1 plus 5 times 2 needs to equal 4. 6 times a negative 1 is a negative 6. Multiply first. 5 times 2, which is 10. Negative 6 plus 10 is a positive 4. And a positive 4 equals a positive 4. But just because it works for this equation, it may not work for this one. So I'm going to plug it into the second equation. 6x minus 7y equals negative 20. We said x is negative 1. Minus 7 times y, which is 2, should equal to negative 20. Multiply first. 6 times a negative 1 is a negative 6. Negative 7, remember minus 7 is the same thing as a negative 7, times a positive 2 is a negative 14. Negative 6 minus 14 is a negative 20. If you need to, stick it in your calculator to make sure. And a negative 20 equals a negative 20, so I am correct. So that tells me that when x is negative 1 in both of these, y is going to be equal to 2. I have 2 more problems that I'd like you to work through on your own. Remember, let's add a little note up top here. If they are the same number, let me use a different color. Same number, you want to subtract. So if your x's are the same or your y's are the same, you're going to subtract. If they're different numbers with your x's or your y's, whichever one you find, then you're going to add the 2 equations. Alright, you have 2 practice problems to do. If you have any questions, please write them down and we'll discuss them tomorrow in class.